Okay, a couple observations I want to add while you're doing the exercise from the previous lesson. Let's assume, let's go to a computer here. And what I'm going to do is clear the cache and see what happens when you do an ICMP message. So what do we mean by clearing the cache? Clear the ARP table. Well, first, let me do an ARP minus A. Let's see what's in there. And let's say we ping some computer, ping 192.168.10.1, or right here, okay? Let's go to real time and do that. Obviously, the simulation is working now. Here you go. Perfect. So now if I do an ARP minus A, as you can see, my ARP table has 2 entries in it. Okay. Now, if I try to reach the server, knowing full well that it's already in my ARP table, let's see what happens. Okay. So this time I'm going to use the simulation. I'm going to go to the computer here and close this and run this and try to reach 192.168.10.1. Okay? And notice right away it's a TCP frame. I mean, it's a frame that is associated with the TCP application for connecting, right? Right? So let's see what happens here. So with TCP, by the way, you could see it's a layer 4, right? Artifact for connecting. This is connection oriented. Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and run this. Watch what happens. So it's running. Now we know that we have the server in the ARP table. Okay. What I'm going to do next is remove or clear out the ARP table and redo the same scenario and observe what happens. So I want you to add that to your exercise in terms of some of the observations, because there could be 2 cases where you already have knowledge of the server within your ARP table, and what happens if you don't. Okay, so notice now everything we're getting, the type, it's either TCP or HTTP. Predictable, not a problem. That was what we saw in the previous video. Okay, let me reset it for a second because this will keep going. But this time I'm going to go back here and let me just close this and go to run, and I'm going to clear the ARP table. Again, if you do an ARP minus A, you can see what's in the ARP table. Now if I do an ARP minus D, okay, and let me reset the simulation. It's telling me that that's what I did here. So even if I run that, so it's going to send a packet out. Okay. And notice this is, or a frame. And notice it's doing ARP. By the way, if I pause it and just pick one of them, okay, this is what's going on. This one does not have to answer because it's not intended for it. This one also does not have to answer. This one might not answer at all, okay, as you can see. Let's see what happens next. And that's it. Okay, so let's clear that. Let's go back here and let's do an ARP minus A, and there are no entries. Perfect. Now let's try to access the web server, and in particular the web page, right? So I'm going to go back here, close on this, do this, and I'm going to type 192.168.10.1. Now watch what happens. Okay, let's run this. As you can see, not only you're doing a TCP, but you're going to have to do an ARP to populate the ARP table. Okay? So the same idea, same objective, but two different scenarios. One, your ARP table already had some data, or two, your ARP table was clear. It had nothing in there. And this is the scenario where you had nothing in the ARP table. So as you can see, before even establishing the full connection, we had a whole bunch of frames with ARP in them. And then once this is done, let's go ahead and verify our computer, PC0, if its ARP table has been updated. Okay, I can go to real time. That will accelerate things. Okay, and let's go to the computer here. You can see the web page loaded up. And what I'm going to do now is go back to the command prompt and run ARP-A. And I want to see if indeed I have, and sure enough, I have information on 192.168.10.1. Okay, and that was done while I was trying to access a web page on the server. All right, so it does not have to be a ping. So when you're using either Packet Tracer or in the real world you're using Wireshark, and you're seeing all sorts of frames that has ARP, while you're doing an ICMP or an HTTP, understand that what the computers are trying to do is build their ARP tables as well, while the service connection is being established. Keep that in mind. Go back to the previous lab and complete it now that some of these have been clarified for you. See you then.